I've got to be honest, we are almost halfway into 2025, and now I think I feel comfortable in saying 2025 has been a much better year for movies than 2024. This is the only aspect where 2025 is better than 2024. When I say 2025 is a better year for movies than 2024, I acknowledge that there were a lot of great movies that came out in 2024. There were a lot of great movies that came out that year. But on the other hand, there was a lot of garbage that came out in 2024, and I mean a lot of garbage. It was insane to me, the abnormally large amount of terrible movies that came out in 2024. And I know that this is most likely because of the 2023 strikes, but still, I can't believe we got this many bad movies in 2024. In comparison, there haven't been that many mega stinkers in 2025. Obviously, not every movie that's come out this year so far is a winner, and again, we're almost halfway into the year. Maybe we'll get a lot more bad movies in the latter half of the year, but so far, the good has outweighed the bad. In 2024, you had a mixture of great movies and awful movies. In 2025, the great movies outweigh the awful movies. And some of the lower tier movies that have come out this year so far aren't even awful necessarily. Captain America: Brave New World, for example, I think is a very weak, dull movie, but I wouldn't call it awful necessarily. I wouldn't call it a terrible movie. It's just a very unremarkable movie. For the most part, we've gotten some really good movies this year. Mickey 17 is a really unique movie. Novocaine is a lot of fun. Thunderbolts, I was not expecting to be as good as it was. I thought this movie was gonna be very meh, whatever, it's gonna be average, just like Captain America: Brave New World. And then I saw the reviews for this movie were surprisingly really good. And then I watched the movie and it was hot damn, I was not expecting this to be one of the better post-Endgame MCU movies. Sinners is a masterpiece and easily the best movie of the year so far. Actually, no, I have a feeling it might stay the best movie of the year, unless Superman and or Fantastic Four really exceed my already high expectations. And the Minecraft movie is, well, the Minecraft movie. Up until now, the only movie that has come out this year that I thought was complete and utter dog shit, the only straight up bad movie that has come out this year in 2025 so far is the Snow White remake. As soon as I finished watching this movie, I was like, that's it. That's the worst movie of 2025 right there. I didn't care if it was only March. I just knew this was going to be the worst movie of 2025. There was quite simply no way that this could be dethroned in any way. There's no way we could get a movie this year that'll be worse than Snow White. And then very recently, I watched The Weeknd's newest movie, Hurry Up Tomorrow, based on his album of the same name that came out earlier this year. Now, The Weeknd, I believe, needs no introduction at all. He is one of the biggest musicians of the last decade, with tons and tons of modern day pop classics underneath his belt. The Hills, Can't Feel My Face, Starboy, I Feel It Coming, Blinding Lights, Save Your Tears, the list goes on. Anyone that clicked on this video expecting me to hate The Weeknd or his music just because I hate this movie, well, you couldn't be any more wrong. The Weeknd as a musician is amazing. The Weeknd as an actor is fucking awful. I'm sure most of you remember a few years ago he had that show, The Idol, a show that only lasted 1 season and 5 episodes before it ended up getting cancelled due to how critically panned it was. Now, there were a lot of things that made this show bad, but one of the biggest reasons people clowned on this show was The Weeknd's acting. You watched this show, and it was extremely obvious that, yeah, The Weeknd is not good at acting. I mean, there were a lot of other problems with the show. The show would have still been garbage even if The Weeknd was a fantastic actor, but him being a terrible actor was just the cherry on top. The fact that the only redeeming quality for this show was the music that it had. Just should tell you everything right there. And so here we are 2 years later, and we're getting something significantly more ambitious from The Weeknd, a full-on movie, based on his most recent album, no less. Now, I didn't see this myself personally, but apparently this movie debuted with a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, which means that we were just absolutely in for a good time. Given the fact that I have previously gone out of my way to see movies in theaters because of the fact that they've gotten awful reviews, and not despite the fact that they've gotten awful reviews, I just knew I could not miss out on this movie. I was extremely curious to see what this movie was all about. I was not expecting for this to potentially be the worst movie I've ever seen. Like, I'm not joking. I'm being 100% serious when I say that this might possibly be the worst movie I've ever seen. If this somehow isn't the worst movie I've ever seen, this is definitely up there as one of the all-time worst. Holy shit, man. I know this might sound confusing to anyone that hasn't watched this movie. Believe me, it's not worth it. Do not watch this movie. But this movie has no storyline at all. There is no plot in this movie. There are things that happen in this movie, but they have no reason to happen at all. They just happen for the sake of happening. There's no rhyme or reason as to why they happen. They just happen. There are so many things that are introduced into this movie, and then they're just never further explored. Nothing is ever explained once in this movie. There are so many things that happen in this movie, and it just gives you no explanation as to why they happen. Everything that happens in this movie, you would think would lead up to something big happening at the end, but then there's nothing like that at all. The movie just ends exactly the same way it starts. When I made my review on Joker 2, I criticized the movie for having a similar problem. I'm sure most of you know how a movie is structured. There's a first act, a second act, and a third act. And I criticized the fact that Joker 2 essentially felt like one giant 2-hour-long first act. I could not be able to pinpoint to you when the first act of the movie ends and when the second act begins, because the whole movie is a f***ing first act. Hurry Up Tomorrow suffers a similar problem, except it's somehow even worse than Joker 2, because at least Joker 2 has a plot. At least you could understand what the hell is going on in Joker 2, even if the movie is bad. This movie reminds me so much of last year's Megalopolis, in the sense that they're just so pretentious and artsy-fartsy. They think they're smart and clever when they're just annoyingly pretentious. And then they also have extremely convoluted, extremely hard to understand storylines. But I actually think Hurry Up Tomorrow is a worse movie than Megalopolis, because yeah, Megalopolis has a borderline incoherent storyline, but at least there's something that vaguely resembles an idea when you watch the movie. You could kind of ever so slightly see what the movie is trying to tell you. And then with Hurry Up Tomorrow, it's like, what is this movie trying to tell me? What the f*** is going on in this movie? I cannot believe Snow White has been dethroned. I genuinely was dead certain that Snow White was going to be the worst movie of 2025, but it seems I have been proven wrong thanks to Hurry Up Tomorrow. Buckle up, folks. I'm about to tackle the worst movie of 2025, and maybe the worst movie I have ever seen, period. There are 3 main characters in this movie, played by The Weeknd, Jenna Ortega, and Barry Keoghan. I'm not sure if I mispronounced his last name. I apologize if I did. The Weeknd plays himself in this movie. Like, I'm not even joking. It's just a fictionalized version of The Weeknd. That is the main character of this movie. He's not playing a character in this movie like he did in The Idol, where he played Tedros or whatever the f*** his name was. It was like a really stupid name like that. No, This is just straight up The Weeknd playing The Weeknd. It is a movie about The Weeknd, written by The Weeknd, starring The Weeknd as The Weeknd. And then Jenna Ortega plays this like fan of The Weeknd, and the two of them meet up at a concert, and most of the movie is spent with them together. And finally, Barry Keoghan plays The Weeknd's manager. I want to note in advance, I have no idea what the names of Jenna Ortega and Barry Keoghan's characters are. I don't know if they even have names. I don't think like Jenna Ortega's character is like super important to the movie's story. I don't think they say her name even once, which is why I'm referring to them by the actors' names and not the characters' names, because I could not tell you what the characters' names are, and I really couldn't care less what the characters' names are, to be honest. But anyways, Barry Keoghan plays The Weeknd's manager, and compared to Jenna Ortega, he's barely in the movie at all. He's supposed to be the third main character, but he doesn't really appear all that much in the movie. He does contribute enough to the movie's storyline that prevents me from saying, oh, you could cut him out of the movie and nothing would change. I don't think he's that worthless to the movie's storyline, but he's also barely in the movie despite being the third main character, so there's that. The movie opens up with The Weeknd, obviously, as he prepares for a concert. Now, I walked into that movie theater, I sat through all of the trailers that preceded this thing, and the first thing that you are greeted with when watching this movie is The Weeknd staring in front of you. You can only imagine how fucking awkward and uncomfortable it must be to just have this giant screen projecting The Weeknd in front of you, and he's just staring at you, and then he's blowing raspberries. He's going boo, boo, boo. I can't fucking do it. I'm sorry. Boo. Oh, Jesus, man. Boo. That's probably the best you're gonna get from me, honestly. That's the best I could do. And it's like the instant I saw this, I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be real fucking garbage. I just know it. I'm in for some real dog shit tonight, baby. If only I knew how bad this movie could truly get, honestly. So then after that, we finally get The Weeknd performing one of his songs from Hurry Up Tomorrow, and it's almost essentially the whole song. Something that I want to bring up is this movie is not a musical. Even though I hate this movie, even though I think this is the worst movie I've ever seen, I'm not against the idea of this movie. I'm not against the idea of having like a movie based on this album. I'm sure in theory this movie could actually be good. We have had movies based on albums before in the past, you know. We've had movies based on The Wall by Pink Floyd and Tommy by The Who, for example. This movie had the potential to be like the modern day equivalent to those movies. But there's one problem. The Wall and Tommy are good movies. This isn't. This movie is not a musical. As far as I'm aware, this is one of the only songs from Hurry Up Tomorrow that's in the movie. Obviously, the song is good. I don't remember what song it was. I think it was called Wake Me Up. I don't remember, but the song itself is good. The music is good, but it feels kind of cheating to say that the music is the only redeeming quality of this movie, considering the fact that you could just listen to the album itself and forget about the movie, and you would miss out on literally nothing at all. And there's barely any of The Weeknd's music in this movie, so there's that as well. When you take both of those things into consideration, it feels kind of redundant bringing up the music as a redeeming quality, don't you think? So throughout this opening scene, we cut back and forth between The Weeknd performing this song at a concert and Jenna Ortega going around pouring gasoline all over this house like she's Jesse Pinkman in that one episode of Breaking Bad. And while she's pouring gasoline all around the house, she is crying hysterically. Eventually, she leaves the house and she lights it up on fire before driving away in a pickup truck. Now, you would think this would be important to the story. You would think there's a reason why she burned down this house. Guess what? There's no reason at all. I thought this movie would do something about that. I thought it would lead up to something with that. I thought that was going to be relevant to the storyline. But no, none of it is ever explained at all. Why is Jenna Ortega pouring gasoline all over this house? Why is she crying hysterically while doing it? Is this even her house that she's trying to burn down, or is this someone else's house? Does this house belong to like a character that we never once see in this movie? Regardless of if this is her house or if this was someone else's house, it doesn't explain why is she burning it down. The movie never once explains this at all. She just burns down this house for no reason at all. It feels like they didn't know how to introduce Jenna Ortega's character in this movie, and so they came up with this scenario where she's going around trying to light a house on fire, pouring gasoline all over the place, and so they include that into the movie, but then they just couldn't be bothered to provide an explanation as to why she's burning down this house. She just does it for the sake of doing it. She does it just because. This is what I mean when I say this movie has no storyline. This is what I mean when I say there are things that happen in this movie, but they have literally no reason to happen at all. They just happen for the sake of happening. There's no rhyme or reason as to why any of it happens. It doesn't lead into anything big by the end of the movie. It just happens. Mind you, this is only the beginning of the movie, and I'm already this pissed off with it. So throughout the first half of this movie, The Weeknd is trying to recover and move on from a breakup. The movie starts off during the opening credits with this voicemail from presumably his ex, most likely, and she's going on about how she hates The Weeknd and she feels betrayed and heartbroken by him, how he's a terrible person, his mother will never forgive him, stuff like that. When I started watching this movie, I saw this juxtaposed with Jenna Ortega crying her eyes out, pouring gasoline all over this house. I thought the two were connected in some way. I thought, okay, maybe Jenna Ortega is the ex. I don't know. I mean, it would be really fucking weird considering the age gap between The Weeknd and Jenna Ortega. The Weeknd is in his mid-30s while Jenna Ortega is in her early 20s. You know, they're both adults, of course, but it still just feels kind of off, honestly. But guess what? No, that's not the case at all. There's no correlation at all between this nasty breakup that The Weeknd had and Jenna Ortega going around crying her eyes out, burning down this house. Jenna Ortega's character is not The Weeknd's ex, for better or worse. I mean, I guess it's for the better because, again, there's the weird age gap, but it's also for the worse because then the movie's plot makes even less sense than it already does. But I'll save that for later. After the concert scene ends and the house burning scene ends, we cut to different scenes jumbled together. There's a scene where Jenna Ortega tries to steal gas from a gas station without getting caught by this police officer. It's one of the very rare moments in the movie where it feels like I'm watching a normal movie. And then there's a bunch of scenes where The Weeknd is partying. He's with a bunch of girls in a limousine. He's at a house party, whatnot. And it's clear that, like, he's not feeling the party mood. He's still not recovering from the breakup. There's a scene where he's flying on a private jet with Barry Keoghan's character, and he tries to get Barry to contact his ex, and he's unable to. The ex doesn't pick up, and this just pisses him off even more. There's also this subplot that's included as well, where it's like The Weeknd has this, like, thing in his throat that negatively affects his voice box, and the doctor advises that he should get a lot of rest and he shouldn't continue touring, and The Weeknd just ignores it. And once again, you would think this weird throat issue that The Weeknd has would be important to the movie's plot. It's not. I mean, it is considerably more important to the movie's plot than Jenna Ortega burning down this house, but still, it doesn't serve much of a purpose to the movie. You could cut this throat subplot out of the movie, literally nothing about it would change. And so we cut to The Weeknd preparing for another concert. Before the concert, though, he starts recording a voicemail to his ex, where he goes on this huge, like, tangent. He goes on this rant where he's like, "F you, bitch, I'm better than you. Don't you realize how much I love you, you bitch?" much. Nobody is going to remember you, but everyone's going to remember me because I'm the Weeknd. I'm a legend. That's not 100% exactly how the rant goes, but that is kind of the gist of it, basically. Friendly reminder. This is supposed to be the Weeknd himself. He's not playing a character in this movie. He doesn't have like a fake made-up name or anything like that. The movie makes it explicitly clear that yes, this main character is the Weeknd. I don't know if the people behind this movie realize this just kind of makes the Weeknd look like a really terrible person. Maybe that's the point of the movie, but still, if that is the point of the movie, then that just kind of makes it even worse, honestly. Going back to The Idol, I remember when that show came out, I saw there were people saying like, oh, because of The Idol, because of the stuff that's in The Idol, it's completely ruined the Weeknd for me. I'm not able to listen to his music anymore, that sort of thing. And I feel like this movie is gonna do even more damage to his reputation. I wouldn't be surprised if more and more fans of his music get turned away because of this movie. They're not gonna be able to listen to Blinding Lights or Can't Feel My Face without thinking of any of this. Like, it's gonna be really hard. If this is on purpose, that just makes it even worse, honestly. Oh yeah, of course, The Weeknd is not very good at acting. Again, amazing musician, terrible actor. And much like with The Idol, even if The Weeknd was a fantastic actor, this movie would still be awful. This would still probably be the worst movie I've ever seen. Again, him being a terrible actor is just the cherry on top. And then after that, he goes on with the concert as normal, singing the exact same song that we saw him sing at the beginning of the movie. Except this time, it's clear that he's not really all there. He's not really 100% in the mood to sing this song this time. He's not in the mood for this concert. Midway into the song, he just stops singing. And then he sees Jenna Ortega in the crowd. And this prompts him to walk off the stage, entering the backstage area. Obviously, the crowd gets angry at this. They start booing him. Barry Keoghan gets angry at the Weeknd for just ending the concert early. And then Jenna Ortega tries to follow the Weeknd, and eventually the two of them meet up backstage. Again, as I mentioned before, these two characters don't know each other at all. With the way the movie presents these two characters for its first half, it makes you think, yeah, they know each other. There is a connection between these two characters. But no, that's not the case at all. That's not the case at all. Why does the Weeknd decide to abruptly end the concert after specifically seeing Jenna Ortega in the crowd? It's never explained. But whatever. These two meet up together backstage, they decide to leave the concert, and they head out to a pier, in what is yet another extremely rare moment where the movie kind of feels like a movie, actually. You have these two characters hanging out together at this pier. They play air hockey, they go on a Ferris wheel, they go on a roller coaster, they hang out together at a bar, and it's like, it's the closest the movie gets to feeling like a real movie. And then after this montage, we cut to the two of them in the back of a taxi. And that's where it's revealed that, no, the Weeknd doesn't know this girl. Jenna Ortega's character doesn't know the Weeknd personally. The taxi pulls up to a hotel where we see Barry Keoghan's character trying to call the Weeknd, trying to get in contact with him. And so the Weeknd asks the taxi driver to drive them to another hotel. And that right there, folks, is the last that we see of Barry Keoghan's character for most of the movie. And so we cut to this hotel suite, this apartment, I don't know. And this is essentially where the remainder of the movie takes place. The rest of the movie takes place in this hotel suite. We might be halfway through the movie, but believe me, the weird, pretentious, confusing nature of this movie is far from done. The next scene of this movie showcases yet another problem that this movie has. Not only is the storyline non-existent, but the pacing is also non-existent as well. This thing goes at a snail's pace. There's a scene where the Weeknd previews and unreleases a song to Jenna Ortega's character, and I don't remember what the song was about. I don't think it's important. Nothing that's in this movie is important at all. There is not a single detail in this movie that is important at all. Again, everything that happens in this movie happens just for the sake of happening. Presumably every detail in this movie is there simply just because. There's no deep meaning behind this movie. It's just things happen for the sake of happening. There are certain details that are the way that they are simply for being the way that they are. There's no deep meaning behind them at all, I guarantee you. So anyways, The Weeknd goes on to preview this unreleased song to Jenna Ortega's character, and the song itself is probably not that long. It's only like 3 minutes long and that's it. But when you're watching a movie like this, it feels like a slog to sit through. Like the movie is testing your patience. You would think The Weeknd would play a small snippet of this song and that's it, but no, it goes on and on and on. This movie forces you to watch these two characters listen to the entire song, or at least a large chunk of it. The song itself is fine. I don't even remember how it goes, to be honest. But when you're watching the movie, it really feels like it's testing your patience. Again, let me remind you all, this is not a musical. I know it stars The Weeknd. I know it's based on one of his albums. But guess what? This movie is not a musical. I never thought I would ever say this, but I think this movie would have been better if it was a musical. Again, I had previously compared this to other movies based on albums, notably Pink Floyd's The Wall and The Who's Tommy. You compare this movie to Pink Floyd's The Wall, and you're gonna see there's a reason why The Wall works while this movie doesn't. I've seen people frequently criticize this movie for simply being a glorified music video for the album, and I wish that's what the movie was. I really do wish that's what this movie was. I wish this movie followed what Pink Floyd's The Wall did, and yeah, I know these are two completely different albums from two completely different times. They're both completely different genres. I get it. This is not a lay wrong generation thing or anything like that. I'm just saying it would have been perfect if this movie just followed what Pink Floyd's The Wall movie did. The Wall is a concept album, a rock opera. The Wall tells a story, and the movie is supposed to be a visual companion to the album. It's essentially a musical. There's very little actual dialogue in the movie. Most of the movie is just the songs from the album and that's it. Except now you have visuals to better understand the story of The Wall, to better understand the story that The Wall is trying to tell you. Now, much like Hurry Up Tomorrow, The Wall is a movie that has a lot, and I mean a lot of weird, strange, surreal imagery. But unlike Hurry Up Tomorrow, all of the weird, surreal imagery that's in The Wall actually has meaning behind it. It actually serves a purpose. It actually contributes to the storyline of this movie, to the general storyline of The Wall, both the album and the movie. Unlike Hurry Up Tomorrow, The Wall actually has a storyline. It's not weird for the sake of being weird like Hurry Up Tomorrow is. Imagine if this movie did something similar to that. It would have been so much better. I wish this thing was a musical. I wish this movie had more of the songs from Hurry Up Tomorrow on it. I wish it further explored the concept and themes and whatnot that Hurry Up Tomorrow has. I wish it actually felt like a movie, you know? Instead, what we end up getting is a hodgepodge of random ideas that are just stuck together. So anyways, The Weeknd is previewing this unreleased song to Jenna Ortega's character, and it goes on for ever. And then we cut to the next morning where the two of them are having breakfast, and as The Weeknd goes to fix himself up a drink, Jenna Ortega's character gets a phone call from her mom. After answering the phone call, her mom starts lamenting her and criticizing her for burning down this house. She's like, "How could you do this? Why would you do such a thing?" And Jenna Ortega's character starts crying, and you'd think this is where we would find out why she burned down the house in the first in place. But once again, no, I've established this before, but I cannot get over this. This movie has this character burn down this house at the beginning of the movie for seemingly no reason at all. It is never explained once in the movie, and even in the scene where you have her mom criticizing her for burning down the house, it doesn't give you any further idea, any further explanation as to why she burned down the house. This is also the only scene in the movie where her mom is even a character at all. You don't see her once physically. And so once again, I have to ask, what the is the point of putting this into the movie? You could cut this phone call scene out of the movie, and quite literally, nothing would change. Nothing would get affected at all. By extension, you could cut out this whole thing of her burning down this house, and I guarantee you nothing about the movie would change. Nothing about the movie would be affected whatsoever. I know there's probably going to be some extremely pretentious cinephile, maybe some extremely die-hard parasocial fan of The Weeknd that's going to defend this and be like, no, you don't understand. Her burning down the house and the movie not giving an explanation as to why she burned down the house is super deep and creative. It's so clever and subversive and deep, you know? It's symbolic of blah blah blah, and it's like, no, it's just bad fucking writing. That's all that it is, and that's all that it will ever be. There's no deep symbolic message regarding why she burned down the house, and why the movie doesn't explain why she burned down the house. It's just bad writing. Simple as that. After all of this, The Weeknd prepares to head out of the hotel, intending to visit the doctor for an update on his throat issue, and then resume the tour where he will fly from California to Australia. Jenna Ortega's character says that she's coming with him to Australia, and The Weeknd's like, no, you can't come. And then Jenna Ortega's character is like, no, but you clearly need me. You're not doing well mentally. We had a great time together the night before. It's obvious that you need me. And then the two of them get into an argument, and then it all culminates with this now infamous scene that most likely you've seen floating around online, where you get an idea of just how amazing of an actor The Weeknd is. This argument is meant to be a tense scene, and you have The Weeknd just mildly yelling to Jenna Ortega, shut the f*** up, shut the f*** up, leave me the f*** alone, you know, stuff like that. And he sounds only like mildly annoyed, and that's it. It's one of the only funny bad things about this movie. I remember there were people that were laughing at this scene because of how bad The Weeknd's acting was. He's going on this tangent in a very mildly annoyed voice, despite the fact that this is supposed to be a tense argument scene. He's going on swearing like a sailor, swearing left and right, like Vivzy Pop decided to write this movie all of a sudden. And then we get the funniest thing in this goddamn movie easily. The Weeknd finishes his tangent, he leaves out the front door, and then Jenna Ortega's character hits him with like a bottle or something. She hits him in the head, and then we cut to like The Weeknd slowly falling down in this like black void or whatever, and it looks so f***ing stupid. It looks so goofy that I couldn't help it. I just started laughing out loud. I tried to conceal my laughter, or at least laugh quietly, in the event that there was someone at my screening that genuinely cared about this movie. There was someone at my screening that was genuinely interested in this movie, and they didn't just watch it just to take the piss out of it like I did, but I couldn't help it. During this scene, I was just dying of laughter, just because of how stupid it looked. Sadly, this is where the funny bad stuff comes to a halt. So then we cut to The Weeknd in bed. He looks all around the hotel for Jenna Ortega's character, but he can't find her anywhere. As a matter of fact, he can't find anyone around him. He looks through his contacts and text messages and whatnot. They're completely empty. He goes all around the hotel, he goes outside into the streets, and it's completely empty. There's no one around him. And then The Weeknd goes back into the hotel. He goes into the elevator. He tries to push up, and then the elevator just takes him down. And he keeps pushing the up button again and again and again, and instead he just keeps going lower and lower and lower until he ends up in this like underground cave or whatever, catacombs underneath the hotel, and it's completely pitch pitch black down here. The only source of light that he has is from his phone flashlight, and that's it. And so he goes further and further into these catacombs. He's like, hello, who the is there? Is there anyone there? And then he comes across this girl who's just crouched down. Who is this girl? Is this Jenna Ortega's character? Is this his ex that is so important to this movie, yet you never see her once at all physically? I don't know. It's just this girl that's crouched down in front of the Weeknd, and then all of a sudden this movie decides, nah, I want to be a horror movie now. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that cliche thing that horror movies do, the jump scares, you know, where there's a scene that's extremely quiet and then it's just like, boom, loud jump scare noise, just like that. Well, the movie decides to do something like that. You have this girl jump up to the Weeknd, and all of a sudden you have this loud noise. Prior to that, it's just complete silence the moment the Weeknd finds this girl. Except this movie decides to be a little extra special by having the loud noise in question go on for quite a while. So we have this girl attacking the Weeknd, I guess, I don't know. And there's just this loud noise playing in the background, and it's like, it's just a headache is what it is. When you're watching this movie in a theater, it's like the last thing you want is to hear this like extremely loud, extremely annoying noise, but the movie just gives it to you just like that. And then we cut to the Weeknd outside in the middle of nowhere around this like desert area, I believe, standing in front of a fireplace, and next to him is this kid. I don't know if this is like a kid version of the Weeknd or if this is just any other kid. I don't know what this is supposed to symbolize, if it's supposed to symbolize anything at all. There's just the Weeknd standing in front of this fireplace with this kid is sitting next to him. And then we cut to the Weeknd in bed again. Again, none of the stuff that happened prior is ever explained. I'm guessing everything that happened is like a dream sequence. Hell if I know. Him being completely alone, him finding the girl in the catacombs, him standing next to the fireplace. It's like, again, it's just things happen in this movie for the sake of happening. There's no rhyme or reason as to why they happen. The most logical theory is that this was a dream sequence, but even then, it's still just really weird and out of place, and it doesn't really serve much purpose to the movie if it's a dream sequence. And I swear to God, if I see anyone use the fact that this whole scene was potentially a dream sequence as an excuse for why the movie doesn't explain any of this stuff happening. If I see anyone use the "it's a dream sequence" bullcrap to defend the fact that this movie decides I'm gonna be weird for the sake of being weird, I swear to God, we're gonna have a problem, okay? We're gonna have a problem. Yes, I know that dreams do have a tendency to be really strange, really weird, and really surreal, but that doesn't excuse that for a movie like this. That's not an excuse. Everything that happens in this dream sequence is never explained. It's never acknowledged again for the remainder of this movie. Once again, you could cut all of this out of the movie and nothing of importance would be lost. Once again, I have to ask, why the is any of this in the movie? What is the point? So anyways, the Weeknd wakes up tied up to the hotel bed. Jenna Ortega's character walks into the room and promises to untie him if he tells her the truth. And then we get the only other funny bad moment in the entire movie. Jenna Ortega starts going through several of the Weeknd's songs in order to try and analyze them. Like, she puts on Blinding Lights, for example, and she goes on and on about how, oh, most people don't know what this song is about. This song is actually about how you blah 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 and whatnot. And it's like, girl, you're not Patrick Bateman, okay? Stop trying to be like Patrick Bateman. You will never be Patrick Bateman. As I mentioned before, this is the only other funny bad moment in the movie just because of the American Psycho similarities, but sadly, it's funny bad to an extent. Much like the earlier scene where the Weeknd plays that unreleased song to Jenna Ortega's character, this scene goes on for way too long. In addition to Blinding Lights, Jenna Ortega Ortega's character does the exact same thing with 2 or 3 other songs. And it's like, okay, we get it. We get the point that the movie is trying to make after Blinding Lights. We don't need to hear more of his music. I mean, his music is great, don't get me wrong, but this just comes off as filler. This just comes off as trying to pad out the runtime for this movie. Trying to add content into a movie that doesn't even have an actual storyline. And then after Jenna Ortega tries and fails to be like Patrick Bateman, someone knocks on the door, and it's none other than Barry Keoghan's character, the Weeknd's manager. Remember him? Yeah, he's supposed to be a character in this movie. Jenna Ortega's character tries to hide the Weeknd in order to prevent Barry's character from knowing that he's there. She goes up to the door and tells Barry that no, the Weeknd isn't here. Barry doesn't believe her, and so he breaks in, and then there's like a fight that ensues, and it culminates with Jenna's character stabbing Barry's character. And that's it. Barry's dead, just like that. And so we reach the climax of the movie. She goes into the Weeknd's room, holding up the gas canister, and she starts pouring gasoline all over the Weeknd. And just as she's about to light the Weeknd up on fire, the Weeknd starts singing this song. And for the 3rd time, the problem comes up again, where this scene goes on for way too fucking long. This is supposed to be the big climactic moment of the movie. You're supposed to be on the edge of your seat for this moment, and instead, you're just exhausted out of your fucking mind just waiting for the movie to end. The Weeknd starts belting out this song, and it's like the longest song in the entire world. It's like, damn, I thought The Weeknd was a pop musician. I had no idea he made progressive rock. That's how long this song feels. I remember during this scene, I audibly whispered to myself, this is the worst movie I've ever seen, and there was this guy sitting next to me that started laughing at me because of that. But I genuinely did think, yeah, this is the worst movie I've ever seen. Not only is this easily the worst movie of 2025, but this is also the worst movie I've ever seen, period. This is a anti-movie. That's what this is. This is like anti-cinema. After hearing this song, Jenna Ortega decides not to light the Weeknd up on fire. We see the hotel room get lit up on fire without the Weeknd, and he walks out of the hotel into the lobby, and the movie ends. I'm not joking. That's how the movie ends. The movie ends giving you far more questions than answers. Notably, there's the fact that Jenna Ortega's character is completely missing during these final few scenes. We see the Weeknd walking out of this hotel room that's on fire, and that's it. It's just the Weeknd. There's no Jenna Ortega to be found anywhere. I don't know why she just disappears from this scene. Like, they just abruptly take her out of the movie. There's no conclusive arc to this character. As a matter of fact, with the exception of Barry Keoghan's character, there's no conclusive arc to any of the characters in this movie. The Weeknd walks away from the burning hotel room, and that's it. The movie ends. And it's never explained what happened to Jenna Ortega's character and why she isn't seen walking away from the burning hotel room with the Weeknd. I don't know if this movie is trying to pull a Fight Club where, spoiler alert for Fight Club, I don't care if this movie is over 25 years old, no movie should be spoiled. This is especially not a movie that you want to have spoiled. I don't know if Hurry Up Tomorrow is trying to be like Fight Club, where it turns out, no, Jenna Ortega's character doesn't actually exist. It was all in the Weeknd's head. In the same way Fight Club has the whole thing of like, Tyler Durden doesn't exist. It's all in Edward Norton's character's head. That's the only remotely logical explanation as to why Jenna Ortega's character just completely disappears in these last few moments of the movie. But given the quality of this movie, I'd say it's more likely that this is just really awful writing rather than the movie trying to rip off Fight Club. Oh yeah, speaking of bad writing, I completely forgot until now that there was a subplot where The Weeknd has like an issue with his throat and it could potentially affect his tour. After the argument scene between The Weeknd and Jenna Ortega, where Jenna's like, no, don't go out, you need me. After that scene, this whole subplot of him having like problems with his throat, it's never brought up again. Now, I feel like with this, it's a little bit different because apparently in 2022, during a concert, The Weeknd actually lost his voice. And I believe this is what heavily inspired Hurry Up Tomorrow. So at least this kind of has a reason to be in the movie. This whole subplot of him losing his voice, him having issues with his throat, at least this kind of has a reason to be in the movie. But still, it's brought up a few times in the movie and then it's never acknowledged again. There's no resolution to it at all. There's no conclusive arc to it at all. It's just a thing that's in the movie, and then the movie decides to do nothing with it after a certain point. It never acknowledges it again after a certain point. And that, my friends, is where Hurry Up Tomorrow comes to an end. Congratulations. You've just finished watching the worst movie of 2025. Throughout this review, I have called Hurry Up Tomorrow the worst movie I have ever seen. When I started working on this review, I was like, oh yeah, Hurry Up Tomorrow is the worst movie I have ever seen, easily. But after thinking about it more, I think this movie should be second place, actually. I think Food Fight might genuinely be the worst movie I've ever seen. I don't care if it's an easy target. I don't care if it's low-hanging fruit. I don't care at all. On the one hand, Food Fight at least has an understandable storyline. But on the other hand, though, Food Fight is this really disgusting, really revolting, really unappealing movie. And, you know, I could say a lot of things about Hurry Up Tomorrow, but none of those three words I would use to describe this movie. I'll admit it, all of the claims that I've made of this being the worst movie I've ever seen, yeah, they're kind of hyperbole. Not really, though, because this is up there as one of the worst movies I've ever seen, but it's not necessarily the worst movie I've ever seen. I'll tell you one thing, though. This is definitely the worst movie of 2025 by far. There is no way we will get a movie this year that'll be worse than this movie, unless somehow they really, and I mean really, up Superman or Fantastic Four or Wicked for Good or Avatar Fire and Ash, unless they somehow up any of those movies beyond recognition, I feel comfortable in calling this the worst movie of 2025. I don't care if I get backlash for saying this is worse than the Snow White remake. I would genuinely rather watch the Snow White remake over this movie. All of the controversy surrounding this movie, the poor reception of this movie, the massive box office bomb that this movie turned out to be, all of the failures surrounding the Snow White remake, and it doesn't matter because now we have a much worse movie in town. Snow White is a boring, unnecessary, controversial, and visually unappealing movie. But you know what? At least it has an understandable, comprehensible, coherent storyline. At least the things that happen in the Snow White remake actually serve a purpose to the movie's storyline. It feels like they have a reason to be happening. At least this movie has a storyline. At least the Snow White remake feels like a movie. A really bad movie, but a movie nonetheless. Hurry Up Tomorrow is not a movie. I don't know what the hell this thing is, but it's not a movie. This is like anti-cinema right here. Things just randomly happen in this movie for no reason at all, and they're never explained once in the movie. And the cherry on top is the fact that the movie decides to just end abruptly, giving you even more questions than answers. The movie doesn't have a long runtime, it's only an hour and 40 minutes, which is one of the few saving graces of this movie. If this was like a 2-hour long movie, like Megalopolis, which I frequently compare this movie to, this could have been even worse. Because on the one hand, if this movie had a longer runtime, maybe then it would actually be able to explain a lot of the stuff that happens in this movie. But given the quality of this movie's writing, I think it's more likely that if this movie was like 2 hours long, it would be full of even more things that happen that are just never explained at all. Entire plot points are brought up and acknowledged, and then after a certain point in the movie, they're just never acknowledged again. The last 20 or so minutes of the movie, where the Weeknd is tied up to this bed and Jenna Ortega's character is holding him hostage, none of the previous plot points that are important to the first half of this movie are ever acknowledged again. The Weeknd's ex is never brought up again. The Weeknd having issues with his throat is never brought up again. That weird dream sequence that he had prior to waking up tied up to bed, it's never acknowledged again. Jenna Ortega burning down this house at the beginning of the movie, it's never acknowledged again. Her mom criticizing her for burning down the house, it's never acknowledged again. The movie just ends abruptly without giving an explanation to any of these things. And it just ends up making the movie feel like an even bigger waste of time than it already is. I genuinely felt like I wasted my time and my money watching this movie. This feels like a really bad streaming movie. This feels like a really bad movie that I would find on Netflix or Amazon Prime, something like that. No, this was a theatrically released movie. This movie would have still been garbage if it came out on Netflix or whatever, but it's the fact that this was a theatrical movie. It's the fact that people had to pay money in order to see this garbage that I just find to be extra insulting. Oh yeah, and the less said about the Weeknd's acting, the better. I swear to God, if I see anyone defend this movie just because it's an original movie, I swear to God, it's not going to end well. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I am tired of the sequels and remakes as well. But I am not going to give a movie brownie points. I am not going to automatically call a movie good just because it's original. Original movies can be garbage as well. As a matter of fact, I would argue that bad original movies are even worse than bad sequels or remakes. Imagine creating a completely original movie from the ground up. It's not a sequel, it's not a remake, it's not attached to any IP whatsoever. It is a completely original, completely unique, completely fresh storyline. There are tons of possibilities for this movie. It has tons of potential to break out and become the next big thing. The sky is the limit when it comes to the possibilities for this original movie. And then the movie comes out, and guess what? It ends up being bad. And then that's it. It ends up being bad. More likely than not, it ends up being forgotten about, and then that's it. And I think that is much, much worse than having Star Wars 69 or Fast and Furious 420 turn out bad. There's also the fact as well that at least Star Wars 69 and Fast and Furious 420 would have understandable, comprehensible storylines. Argyle, Megalopolis, and Hurry Up Tomorrow are all original movies, and guess what? They're all terrible. And guess what? I could not tell you what the goes on in any of these movies, because these movies have near damn impossible to understand storylines. Argyle and Megalopolis are both bloated beyond belief, and I'm 99% sure that Hurry Up Tomorrow doesn't even have an actual storyline. Friendly reminder, the best movie of 2025 so far, maybe the best movie of 2025 period, is a completely original movie. It's not a sequel, it's not a remake, it's not attached to any IP whatsoever. It is a completely original, completely unique, completely fresh storyline with new characters. And you want to know what makes Sinners different from Megalopolis or Hurry Up Tomorrow? I'll tell you. Sinners is actually a f***ing good movie. Sinners actually has an understandable, coherent storyline. Sinners is not bloated like Megalopolis, and it has a storyline unlike Hurry Up Tomorrow. Things happen in this movie, and they feel like they have a reason to be happening. But even looking past that, it's a damn good movie. One of the best movies of the decade easily. Sinners is a perfect example of an original movie that should be supported in a time when we're getting nothing but sequels and remakes because it's actually good. If this movie was bad, like Megalopolis or Hurry Up Tomorrow, I would say, no, do not support this movie. This movie is no better than your average cash grab sequel or remake, and if anything, I'd say it's worse. But I'm not saying that for this movie, because this movie is actually good. For the love of God, do not pull out the "it's an original movie" excuse to try and defend this movie, because it's not going to work. This movie is bad. Accept it. I don't care if this is an original movie. I don't care how much you love The Weeknd's music. Nothing could ever make me change my mind about this movie. And that's another thing as well. I don't know if they deliberately did this or not. I don't know if this was done on purpose or not. But the first half of this movie just paints The Weeknd as a terrible person. Like that whole voicemail rant that he sends to his ex early on into the movie. It's like, really, is this how they want to portray The Weeknd? Again, he's not playing a character in this movie. This is just straight up The Weeknd himself. This is The Weeknd playing The Weeknd. They don't realize that this makes The Weeknd look really bad. It's gonna be really hard to listen to Blinding Lights, as much of a banger as it is, just because of this movie. Just because of the way that this movie portrays The Weeknd. And I love The Weeknd. I think The Weeknd is one of the best pop stars of the last decade. But with this movie and The Idol, it's just incredible how much his reputation has gotten worse. Abel Tesfaye, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I apologize if I mispronounced it. The Weeknd's real name has gone on before saying that Hurry Up Tomorrow will be the final album most likely that he will release under the Weeknd name. And this movie adaptation of Hurry Up Tomorrow is supposed to tie into that. Considering how awful this movie is, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up keeping The Weeknd for one more album and that's it. And then he starts releasing music under his real name. Because, you know, again, you could just ignore the movie and only focus on the album. The album is great, but having it end with this terrible, terrible movie, it's like, god damn, what an awful way to end The Weeknd, seriously. There's only a few positive things I can say about this movie, and that's it. The music is good, obviously. Again, I feel like that's kind of cheating to say that, but it is good. I will give credit where credit is due. The music in this movie is indeed good, even if it does feel like it's cheating to praise the music for this movie. There are two funny bad moments in this movie. The Weeknd arguing with Jenna Ortega, and he's going like, shut the f*** up, shut the f*** up. And this is supposed to be like a tense argument, and instead he just sounds mildly annoyed more than anything else. And then after the argument, Jenna Ortega hits The Weeknd in the head, and then we cut to The Weeknd falling in like that black void or whatever, and it just looks so goofy when watching it. And then later into the movie, when Jenna Ortega has The Weeknd tied up in bed and she's going over some of his songs, analyzing them, And it's like she's trying to be like Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, over here being like, most people don't know the message of Blinding Lights, but actually this song is about blah blah blah. As I mentioned before though, this second scene is only funny bad to an extent. It's funny bad at first because of how similar it is to American Psycho, and then after a while it's like, the movie decides to keep on doing this for a long time because the pacing for this movie is non-existent, and you're just like, bro, we get it. Can we move on, please? The cinematography for this movie is good, I guess. This movie looks good, but that doesn't really matter. A movie looking good doesn't matter if the movie is awful with its storyline. This movie is the textbook definition of style over substance. It has all of these interesting looking shots in it, but then it's like, it doesn't mean anything because the storyline is like, there's barely a storyline in this movie. The runtime for this movie is thankfully not that long, only being an hour and 40 minutes long. If this was like a 2-hour or so movie, it would have been so much more painful, but thankfully this movie isn't super duper long. Even if it potentially would have been better if this movie was longer, just because at least then it would probably explain a lot of the things that are in this movie that are never explained. But once again, if this movie had a longer runtime, it would most likely include more things into its non-existent storyline that would just never be explained at all. More things would happen in this movie seemingly for the sake of happening, and that's it. And finally, the movie's budget is thankfully very low. This movie only has a $15 million budget, and that's it. Now, somehow, despite having a low budget, this movie is doing awful still. This movie is flopping hard. It's only made like $4 million, and that's it. And given the fact that the week after this movie, we're getting the 1-2 combo punch of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning and the Lilo and Stitch remake, I think it's safe to say this movie is just dead. That's it. It's over for this movie. But at least it's not extremely embarrassing given the very low budget for this movie. I have previously looked at movies that all have unnecessarily high budgets and they end up being box office bombs because of the fact that they're bad. Hurry Up Tomorrow could have very easily joined this club, but amazingly enough, it missed out on it thanks to its small $15 million budget. I feel like it's very telling that a few of the compliments, a few of the redeeming qualities that I gave to this movie are, it has a short runtime and it has a low budget. Neither of which are actual praises towards the movie, but instead just me acknowledging that things could be a lot worse, a lot more embarrassing for this movie that has already established itself as a massive failure. None of these redeeming qualities are enough to make up for the fact that this is easily the worst movie of 2025 and one of the worst movies I have ever seen, period. The Weeknd, please, for the love of God, stick to making great music, okay? Anyone that loves The Weeknd and they're gonna assume that I hate him just because I hate this movie, no, that's not the case at all. Do not defend this movie. This movie is terrible and it's not worth your time. The Weeknd is not good at acting, okay? It's as simple as that. We saw that with The Idol, and now we're seeing it again with this movie. Love The Weeknd for what he's good at, making great music. That is all I'm going to say. Anyways, that's about it. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like, and if you're new to the channel, maybe consider subscribing, as it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and I will see y'all next time. Adios.